This week, from deep within the Australian bush, something a little bit different. Toyota Fortuner. Fortuner came out in 2015, and since then it's had a couple of upgrades, a couple of price changes, and a change in the model lineup. Now they've got a 2.8 litre diesel engine with an automatic transmission. That's a 6-speed, which is very, very smooth. You know, I like that Toyota transmission very much. But it's also had a few changes to the front as well, such as these LED lights with the LED daytime running lights. And this Toyota badge is solid, which has a radar in it for the high-speed active cruise control. Unfortunately, this has only got high-speed active cruise control, so it doesn't operate at city speeds and it doesn't have Q assist. It's got a really good deep set of side steps. This is plastic coated, so obviously it's not going to cope with too much heavy treatment. And with the key in my pocket, I can open the doors by pressing the button on the front door handles and simply opening. Locking is just repeating the process. And because the key's in my pocket, I can just press this button under the Fortuner badge at the back, and the hatch swings up. The floor's quite high, but at least the back bit is even with the back of the tailgate here. The spare tyre is underneath the car, so when you've got this packed full of stuff for a camping trip or whatever, or just shopping, you don't have to unload it again should you be unlucky enough to get a spare tyre, and it is a full-size spare tyre too. The seats swing down from the side very much like they do in the Toyota Landcruiser 200. And the space in that third row is kind of limited, so it's best left for little people. And this model, because it's the top model, the Crusade, has rather a nice interior. Because Toyota knows that this car may go off-road, there's some rather smart rubber matting which covers the entire floor inside. There's a 100 watt power outlet, a 120 watt power outlet, and some bag holders. Obviously with that bag holder here on the back of the chair, you're not going to put anything too long on it, but it's perfect for just putting shopping in or whatever. There's some overhead vents and the light controls. And for longer trips, a fold down center armrest with pop out cup holders. There's also an absolute mountain of space. I've got the seat set for me, a good 10 to 12 centimeters of space, and my feet go right under the seat in front. The front seats have plenty of space too, and I was able to get quite a good position to drive. All of the instruments and controls fall easily to hand. One thing I particularly like are generous bins in the front, a place for a bottle and space for all of that detritus that you pick up on a road trip. The door cards just have the normal controls for mirrors, door locks and windows. And of course there's normal controls. This car has a towing pack, so there's some extras included. If you want to use accessories on these cars that have smart start, just leave your foot off the accelerator and press the starter button. It brings the car to life and you can then play radio and all that sort of stuff. Sadly, this excellent sound system, which includes DAB radio and navigation, doesn't include Apple CarPlay, which is really annoying. Below that, there's a single zone automatic climate control, heated front seats, and the hill descent control. There are a couple of cup holders behind that, and you probably can't see it, but some not bad wood grain. It's also up here on the steering wheel. Normally I don't like that, but look, I can't tell this isn't real wood grain. So where's the harm? Behind the gear selector are the driving modes for eco and power. Last but not least, the four-wheel drive controls. They've gone to a little bit of effort. All of the surfaces feel nice and soft to touch, and there's a nice bit of stitching, just by way of making it feel a little bit luxurious. However, one thing that I really get irritated at with Toyota is the El Cheapo clock from circa 1980 Dick Smith. The prices are $45,965 for the GX, $50,790 for the GXL, and $58,290 for the Crusade. On top of that, you can have black and red trim in the Crusade for $200 and premium paint for $600. However, What you really want to hear about is what it's like to drive on-road and on somewhat suspect tracks. Most people buy these cars for the fun. That beep, every single time I've taken off, I've not put the handbrake off far enough. You think it is, but it's not quite. It's got another centimetre to go. Really annoying. So on this fairly reasonably kept graded road, the suspension is lovely. It's very smooth. And now on the bitumen, at getting up to 80 kilometres an hour, it's still pretty smooth. The engine's gotten itself a little bit raucous, and that's not even under heavy acceleration. But generally, the cabin is extremely quiet. Of course, this has Toyota's safety sense. And let me wander over to the white line. There's no other cars. Now that steered me back in, and fairly viciously too. The last thing it wants is for me to have an accident, and I find that quite reassuring. And here's another thing with this 2.8 litre turbo diesel engine. Toyota claims that with the 80 litre tank that you'll get about 1,000 kilometres. That's pretty good going. What it means is you'd get from Sydney to Brisbane or Sydney to Melbourne on a tank with plenty to spare. I think that's probably very good value. Now we're on a slightly less good road, and you can feel bumps. The suspension is fairly taut. This is just some road works, but it's an indication of what some of those bush tracks are like. And now we're on a slightly better road. Still not brilliant, but you can feel that that firm suspension is pushing me around just a little bit. This is one of the main differences between this and the Hilux pickup truck that this is kind of loosely based on. They put a SUV back on this as well. They've taken away the drum brakes and the leaf suspension from Hilux, and they've given it disc brakes and a more sophisticated suspension system, more like the SUVs that you're used to seeing. The main difference between this and a soft roader is the four-wheel drive system. So this inherited the four-wheel drive system from Hilux, which is a good thing. It also inherited many of the other characteristics too, like its towing capacity. The steering is super light, and you can feel on these reasonably tight bends that it kind of wants to do its own thing. That's not to say it handles badly, it doesn't, it's quite good, but it's not a sports car. It just isn't. If you want a sports car, buy a sports car. But now that I am back in civilization, one thing that I suppose becomes pretty apparent is there's no blind spot monitoring, despite the fact that this car is well on the way to being $60,000 on the road. We're now at highway speed, for a little while anyway, and this thing is really smooth. On good tarmac, it's really, really smooth. You sit incredibly high, so much, much higher. We passed a Kluger before, much, much higher even than a Kluger. For a car in the early 50s, before on-roads, mid to late 50s with on-roads, you've got to expect a little bit of something, a little bit of ability. And I think Fortuner does that, and it does that because it has inherited that Hilux DNA. If you've liked the film, please leave a comment below. Also read the video description for links to other stories, and hit there to subscribe.